Hello and welcome to This Week in Cleantech, a 15-minute roundup of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy this week. Today is Friday, December 12th, 2025. We have repeat guest Jael Holzman from Heatmap News joining us shortly. I'm Factor This content director Jeremiah Karpowitz, and unlike your regular host, I don't have an amazing new baby or an incredible mustache to show off, but I do have, here, can you get that? A screaming goat, So that's it's not even as good as the no button, is it? I'm not your regular host, but I am happy to be joined by the mainstay of this show, and that's Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Mike, great to see you.
Hey man, welcome back. You know, I am a mainstay. I cannot overshadow. There's no way I can overshadow Paul Gerke and his AI generated mustache from a few shows ago. I can't hold a candle. I got to know when I'm beaten. But I am getting super psyched for super listener Dana Claire Redden, who's going to be our guest next week. Last show of the year to announce Cleantecher of the Year. So we are really psyched. She runs a small committee that picks these folks. We don't know who they are, and she just shows up and lays it out, and we're pretty fired up about that.
Yeah, no, drum roll. It's going to be a big week next week. And, we want to thank the listeners that have nominated those folks. And I know they've told us how much they're getting out of these episodes. So keep sending in those messages. Send them to me. We really want you guys to be part of the show. You can nominate the stories that caught your eye each week by emailing me. I'm Jeremiah Karpowitz at clarionevents.com. But you can also email Paul. He's easier. He's paul.gerke at clarionevents.com. So let's get into it, Mike. What's the first story we're covering this week?
This Week in Cleantech guests in the past, Matthew Daly and Jennifer McDermott. We've had them both on, and they teamed up to write a piece. Federal judge throws out Trump order blocking development of wind energy. Boom! All right, you get first crack at this one.
Boom, indeed. The judge said that Trump's move to halt all leasing of wind farms on federal lands is, quote, arbitrary and capricious, end quote, and violates U.S. law. A coalition of state attorneys general from 17 states and Washington, D.C. argued that Trump's attempt to halt project permitting jeopardizes the state's economies, energy mix, public health, and climate goals. This is a coalition that has invested hundreds of millions of dollars collectively in wind energy and more on upgrading transmission line. Other people like White House spokesman Taylor Rogers said that the Biden administration gave unfair treatment to offshore wind while hindering the rest of the energy industry with regulations. Justice Department lawyer Michael Robertson argued that the wind order did pause permitting, but did not stop it altogether because Interior Secretary Doug Burgum still evaluates the environmental effects of wind developments. Mike, you're going to tell us what you thought about this piece, but I have to say the mention of Doug Burgum evaluating these permits himself did make me chuckle. Like, is that an email? Is there facts? Like, hopefully there's a few other people involved. There's other layers, but I don't know. What do you think?
In normal times, we would ask why the current clown car energy policy thinks you can get lower power prices while barring the lowest cost form of energy. But we're not in normal times, Jeremiah, in case you hadn't noticed. So one has to just grimace at the sight of these ideology junkies shuffling around in a stupor of stupidity, mumbling to themselves while the rest of us see our utility bills go up. I will say our friends at American Clean Power, ACP, say that wind provides about 10% of all U.S. electricity generation. It makes it the largest source of renewables in the nation. Another Cleantech ally described this decision as a win for consumers and workers and U.S. businesses. We'll take the win for now. Jeremiah, story number 2.
So our second story is by Monty Reel and former TWIC guest Mark Shadek from Bloomberg News, titled How a Nuclear Fossil Fuel Alliance is Winning the Fight for Energy Dominance.
All right. For decades, the fossil fuel lobby competed with nuclear for a share of America's energy grid. Now they're both teaming up against renewable power, and the key force behind the shift is the Front Group, otherwise known as the State Policy Network, a national web of conservative think tanks funded by fossil fuel interests. No connection there. Its state affiliates have become organizers of both anti-renewable campaigns and pro-nuclear policy pushes. And now many of the SPN groups have shaped the Trump administration's energy agenda, one that halts wind energy, it cuts renewable funding, it fast-tracks nukes, and boosts fossil fuels. So, hey, listen, nuclear bros, I've got bad news for you. Seriously. If you think that the fossil fuel lobby sees you as anything more than lipstick for their dating profiles, you're going to find out the hard way how little Harold Hamm and his like care about your nuclear plants. Jeremiah?
Lipstick for the dating profiles. I'm gonna have to use that as the pull quote for the episode. A few weeks ago, you guys covered Governor Rick Perry's Fermi America going public despite having no customers or revenue. So it's just one example of fossil fuel connected investors fueling this nuclear power in the
Outstanding.
U.S. to the benefit of Trump's policies. But I mean, it's a carefully coordinated political strategy that's reshaping how the U.S. builds power generation for the next several decades. That said, I mean, I do think that anything that is going to make nuclear make more sense is a good thing. Like it could lead to that kind of all of the above approach to energy that isn't focused on one solution or another. But I mean, as you said, there's just so much underneath this. There's so much underneath this headline that it is one of the stories that I think we need to keep an eye on and take a deeper look at. So for speaking of stories, Mike, what's our third story?
This one's a little different. This is the first time we have covered a piece from a YouTube content creator. But we need to go where the journalism is being produced. So Marques Brownlee, one of the most influential tech reviewers out there, he posted a video to his channel titled Driving Xiaomi's Electric Car, Are We Cooked? This is kind of cool. All right, Jeremiah, first crack.
So Marquez opens up by noting that his comment section is filled with a recurring claim that if Chinese EVs ever entered the US market, their technology and low cost would leave American competitors in the dust. So in this video, he checks out the Xiaomi SU7 Max for himself. Xiaomi is not primarily an auto company. They're not a car company. They make tablets, headphones, robot vacuums, smartphones, all that sort of thing. The SU7 retails for about 299,000 Chinese yuan, which equates to 42,000 US dollars. It's fully electric, four-door sedan with a 101 kilowatt-hour battery, 673 horsepower, and a 320-mile range. And the specs are comparable to a Tesla Model 3, which today costs 55K. So, I mean, Mike, what do you think?
Okay, Marquez actually drove it for a few weeks, and here's his take. He likes the look, interior and exterior. He likes the ride and the different driving modes. He likes the software, and he likes a lot of the tech features like full self-driving, wireless chargers, backseat tablets, and a navigation system that only speaks to the driver's headrest speaker, leaving the music untouched. So the question is, are we cooked? He concludes, not yet clearly, but you could see that we could get cooked soon. So I think his big point is this is a $42,000 car that feels like a $75,000 car if it were made here in the U.S. Now, we're not going to be seeing this car in the U.S. anytime soon, thanks to the huge tariffs on Chinese EVs. Europe, on the other hand, will see 42,000 Xiaomi SU7 as soon as 2027, which may squeeze out other competition. Jeremiah, our fourth story.
So our fourth story is by Claire Brown from the New York Times, titled "Will the Self-Driving Cars of the Future Lower Emissions?" And over to you, Mike.
Jeremiah, have you ever been on a Waymo before?
I have not. I was just recently in San Francisco and I saw them out in the wild, and my kids were like, there's nobody driving that car. And they were all talking all about the robot car, but no, I haven't been in one.
I gotta say, it's wild. Like, if you haven't ridden in one, it is definitely freaky. I just came back from Phoenix, where they're around the main area. It was interesting. A valet at a restaurant we went to said, "Yeah, I like them, except they don't go on the highway, so everything takes longer." But it's definitely an experience of the future. So, if you haven't heard of them, Waymo is a self-driving taxi service owned by Alphabet, formerly Google. It's partnering with rideshare apps like Uber. All of Waymo's driverless taxis are EVs. They have the potential to replace rides in gas-powered vehicles. They operated 14 million trips across 5 cities this year. Let me say that again. 14 million trips in just 5 U.S. cities. The goal is to complete 1 million rides per week by the end of next year. It also buys renewable energy to offset its carbon footprint. This could have huge implications for air quality. So, a University of Southern California study found that there were fewer emergency room visits for asthma after 20 zero-pollution vehicles per 1,000 residents were added to the roads. Other research said that electrifying 17% of cars could lead to a modest but widespread reduction in ozone and particulate pollution. Jeremiah, your thoughts, my friend?
So, I mean, even as the Trump administration is eliminating these EV subsidies, I mean, driverless cars still could increase the amount of EVs that are on the road. But I mean, the thing is, autonomous vehicles still come with energy costs. Like they still need that energy. The energy required to run 1 billion driverless vehicles for 1 hour is as much as all the data centers in the world that were using power throughout the day in 2023. So, even though more Waymos could mean more rides with electric vehicles, researchers at North Carolina State University also found that driverless cars increased traffic when they made up a substantial amount of cars on the road, meaning that more gas-powered vehicles would be sitting idling, and that would affect air quality. And then another professor from the university said that these effects could be reversed if driverless cars were programmed to drive more aggressively, or if they could communicate with one another in local traffic systems. And one thing that isn't mentioned in the story is that these autonomous vehicles could reduce the need for parking. If more trips are done with driverless cars, that means
Yep.
fewer parking structures need to be built. So less time will be spent circling the block looking for parking, and cities can be built denser, and that increases the efficiency of transportation.
All
So,
right.
Mike, let's jump into story number 5, the big one.
Jael Holzman from Heatmap News. Welcome back, my friend. It is good to see you. You have a piece. Key Senate Democrats oppose the permitting bill. We do a lot with permitting here at my shop, and I talk a lot about it on this show. So, for people who haven't read the story, which we want them to do, tell us what the main takeaway is.
Thank you for having me on, as always, Jeremiah and Mike. It's always a pleasure. The key takeaway is that the Beltway is ridiculously stupid on permitting reform right now.
No, that's all right. That's the quote. Never mind, Mike. That is the quote of the show.
That's the takeaway. So for weeks, I have been watching as the Beltway press, including people I used to work with, have been, whether it's for clicks or to make certain Hill offices happy, overstating the odds of a NEPA overhaul authored by Republicans, moving through Congress, and then ultimately to President Trump's desk. The bill that everyone's been talking about is called the SPEED Act. What it would do is significantly overhaul the way NEPA is implemented by the federal government. It would institute new judicial deadlines for litigation to be brought. It would reduce substantially the amount of factors, like what the government can even consider during the NEPA process. Some of this stuff, NEPA experts have said, probably might be necessary to have the federal government work more efficiently under the law. However, if you overhaul NEPA without ending the Trump administration's freeze on renewable energy permitting, all you're really doing is changing the course of an energy transition, because you're making it much easier for the government to permit fossil infrastructure without doing anything to assure parity across fuel types. For weeks, I had been talking to folks on and off the Hill about how ridiculous the press coverage of this bill was. That even the idea of the quote unquote clean energy industry supporting the bill was drastically overstated. The reason why people said that the clean energy industry supported this bill was because American Clean Power came out in support of the bill advancing through the House. However, even ACP says they need some action on transmission and additional clarity through policy to make sure that its membership is able to still get the same kind of permits that fossil fuel companies can get. So, lo and behold, surprise, surprise, everyone in the Senate who has any stake in the game and who has been pretty clear about what they'd want out of a comprehensive permitting bill the entire time I've covered them for almost a decade is saying, yeah, why would we overhaul NEPA without a fix for transmission and a fix for renewable energy? To some observers, it was kind of like a duh story, but in actuality, it was a huge change because the Hill press coverage and the way that Republicans on the Hill had been talking about this bill made it seem like almost a done deal before it had even made its way to the Senate.
Whoops.
No, thanks for laying that out. Because I mean, I remember seeing the coverage a few weeks ago of this bill coming out, and just at a glance, is like moving faster. That sounds great. But in hearing you lay it all out, I mean, it sounds like what they're trying to do is start building on a foundation of sand when we actually need a solid foundation before we start building.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, renewable energy projects don't really have a NEPA problem. Is insofar as the bureaucracy needs to move faster, yes, but that's more of a staffing issue, right? And that's been a Democratic complaint for a long time, that we're more focused on the statute than we are on the staffing, which has been woefully inadequate for way too long, right? If you think about it, fossil fuel companies, polluters overall, want less of NEPA. Renewable energy companies, there are definitely changes to our federal permitting regime that would make things go faster. The Endangered Species Act is woefully outdated, inadequate for either protecting species or building things faster to ensure we don't continue on a pathway towards planetary disaster. However, the fossil fuel companies were getting away with it for a while in DC and in the press. And so for me, it was about just asking people the simple question, do you still believe the thing you believed for a decade? And the answer was yes. And that's how Sheldon Whitehouse, Martin Heinrich, the top Democrats on the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee and the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee came out in a joint statement with Brian Schatz, who, for his part, had been a little bit ACP bashing on Twitter, angry at them for even endorsing the bill that was moving through the House. They came out in a statement to me, exclusive to me, saying, why the heck would we do the thing that we always said we weren't okay with? And so now, if there is going to be a comprehensive permitting package, the thing they're moving in the House doesn't even really matter. All that matters is the Senate coming to an agreement, an actual bipartisan agreement, and then somehow getting the president to okay it.
Do you think there'll be anything in this bill that would have Doug Burgum get out of the way? Because I know he's really tired. He's staying up very late at night, working on all these permits. The poor man, he has to read every line. He's got
emails and faxes, I think.
He's tired.
He's tired.
Are they going to have it? Is he going to get taken out of the way or no?
Republicans would say that they added language to the bill that got the most moderate Democrats in the House to sign on to it that says the president is not allowed to rescind previously issued permits. And that is the fix.
Well, that's big of them. Okay, but we're talking about the stuff that we want to build.
Right?
Well, we want to build stuff.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the thing that's derailing offshore wind projects is not the president just deciding willy-nilly to rescind permits. What happened was the allies of the fossil fuel industry and NIMBY activists on the coast, on the Atlantic coast, filed lawsuits, and the government is under the law settling those cases to remand permits lawfully, right? Like the bill wouldn't address what's happening to offshore wind. That's a real red herring there. And at the same time, what people actually want is this extra legal chicanery to be dealt with. What people actually want is for people who work in the government to do their freaking job. And that's not happening right now. What's happening right now is you're right. Doug Burgum is staying up very, very late, and he's
tired,
crossing the T's and he's dotting the I's. He's making sure every little thing on the thing is exactly the way the thing should be.
Poor man.
Right? And
probably is like a stamp. Doug Burgum approved. I could just imagine. All right, stamp.
Poor man.
Yeah.
No auto pen for Doug. All right, Jeremiah, we got to go to our Cleantecher of the week.
Excellent. So this week's Cleantecher of the Week is Ryan Johnson. He's the CEO of Culdesac Tempe, a residential development outside of Phoenix. He modeled a blueprint for living in a walkable place, so residents don't need to use cars. Johnson said, quote, "It's one of the best things we can do for climate, health, happiness, low cost of living, and even low cost of government." So congratulations to Ryan.
Good. We want to thank our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez, who I just learned before the show is a morning person. You didn't know that, Jeremiah? Nobody knows that. So he's like he's a world-class rock drummer, and he just came out of the closet as a morning person, which I was shocked by. But we want to thank him anyway. And I suppose we want to thank Claire Querin and Alex Peterson for gathering these stories. Yeah, they're just they're the peasants, but we'll thank them anyway.
Well, an even bigger thanks to Jael for joining us on this episode today. Jael, always happy to feature your insights and get the story behind the story, which I think is enlightening on multiple levels. So please subscribe, give us feedback, share your story suggestions. You can also read all the articles that we discussed this week by clicking on the links in the episode description.
Thank you all for joining us. This peasant is signing off, but we're looking forward to a non-peasant Dana Claire Redden coming back. Cleantechers of the Year. Do not miss it next week. Happy holidays, people.